Welcome to the Port St. John Dependent District Special District Board. This is Wednesday, November 18th. It is now 6 o'clock. First order of business today is the approval of the minutes from the January 8th, 2020 meeting. Did all the board members receive a copy?
Yes.
Have the board members reviewed it? Are there any comments or questions? Okay, no comments or questions. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Wendy, seconded by Randy. Any discussion? None? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing, H1. Did all the board members receive H1 package in the mail?
Yes.
Okay. The requested action is to conduct a public hearing to consider the Port St. John Small Area Study. Has everybody reviewed the package? Are there any questions?
Yes, I wasn't at the meeting where you passed this, the study, or had issues or whatever. So I don't really know what went on there. But could you tell me the reasoning for putting the fire station on Grissom?
I believe the committee, with the assistance of the county, reviewed the locations that were available to move the fire station to, and the property that was identified as owned by the county. in that area, so it would not incur a cost for land purchase. The land was already owned by the county. So that was the rationale.
Okay. Was there other rationale, like, because it's out the way where it is. You know, I didn't know how much of a traffic hazard it would be where they're planning on putting it.
Well, they're not planning on putting it anywhere. It's just a recommendation
Yes,
that was
right.
made. So from here, studies would have to be made to go forward. It's just a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, at this point.
I didn't know whether it had anything to do with the 2,000 houses coming along Grissom, whether it'd be nearer.
The committee, when they, as you know, you were there
Yeah.
for some of the meetings. So with, the committee reviewed the available land use and the spread of Port St. John from east to west, north to south, as you know. And there was talk of putting a second fire station in, but the costs involved in building another building, purchasing the property and all was quite expensive. And when it was presented that there is property on Fay that the county could use, should they opt to do that, it would be cheaper to move the firehouse and equipment than to build a brand-new building, establish all that out on the west side, is what they were looking at.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah, I just wondered, you know, because that's an awful lot of people that are coming along Grissom. 2,000 houses.
Yep. Okay, are there any
Okay, no.
more questions on subject H1?
Actually, I have a question. That's on.
Yep, make sure your green light's on.
Is there a map in this larger packet that shows us these particular parcels, that the recommendation was from residential 4 to commercial, to neighborhood commercial? Is there a map that indicates that, where these
Are
are?
you talking about the small area study?
Yeah, yes.
I'm not aware of a map that went in there.
Could you kind of tell me which of these parcels in recommendation 3 and recommendation 4, where those pieces of land are?
Mr. Chair, if I can just interject.
If you would, please. Thank you.
I can explain that. There was not, excuse me, there was not a map that was provided in the packet, and I apologize for that. There's actually 2 properties that staff focus on changing either the land use or the zoning on there. The first property was located on the north east corner of Grissom and Fay, and it's an existing barber shop. That was one of the properties. The other property was, let me get my bearings here. It was just north of the school on Fay Boulevard. It was that the daycare? Yeah, there's. There was a PowerPoint presentation, and I neglected to include that in the packet. I apologize for that. There's another property on Fay over by the school, and then the other recommendation was along US 1 and Fay Boulevard, and that was a recommendation that no land use and zoning changes were required. So that's in a nutshell.
What action are we being asked for in this?
Just,
In this
okay,
H1.
so the small area study was 6-7 month process, and there was a committee, and that was approved in that committee. The package was then forwarded to this board to consider the study that was made. And it's for the future land use.
The study seems very comprehensive. It looks like the committee did excellent work,
Yeah.
but I'd like to see where these pieces of property are.
Yeah, yeah. No, just do it by my map, or just by mapper. So Jane's going to get up on the computer and use our GIS software to show you the property.
It won't let me on here?
So what I can do is when I get back to the office, I will send you all the PowerPoint presentation that we all presented to the committee, and I'll make it very clear which properties that were included in the overall recommendation.
I'm so sorry. Were any of these properties on the west side of Grissom?
No. No, there's only, there was one property was on the northeast corner, and it was the existing barber shop. That's the far west that we went.
Okay?
Yeah, I have one more question,
Yes,
probably for staff. It says about the fire station, funding source could be a combined MSTU and MSBU within the boundary. Where are we now on the parks MSTU? Have we finished that? We must be paid for the parks. Is it maintenance now? And the community centre?
The goal of this study was just to make recommendations.
Oh,
So there hasn't been done any more work of whether or where that fire station is going to be. Mr. Darling at the committee meeting did discuss with the members that the county is in the process of doing a needs and assessment countywide, and that will look at the level of service and where, and if any, new fire stations or expansion of existing fire stations will need. So until that's done, I think everything is on hold, and based on that study, the county will look at the needs assessment of that.
okay, thank you.
Again, please remember, this is just a recommendation. It's
Yes,
not, this will
yes,
happen,
I'm
it's just a
understanding.
recommendation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Okay.
could have found that out but I've been a bit indisposed.
Okay, all right, are there any more questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, but if I may, because
Yes.
it sounds like there's going to be some confusion wherever this is sent. The corner of Fay Boulevard and Adam Place is either a Circle K or a Family Dollar, depending on whether you go east or west. I am assuming, and you shouldn't do that the corner you're actually talking about is Fay and Adam, where the current Brevard County Sheriff's Office way station is? Or are you talking about Fay Park, which is across the street from that corner?
No, it wasn't, let me,
That is the second sentence of recommendation one, going from Fay and Carroll to Fay Boulevard and Adams Place. That is the traffic light, which certainly would benefit a fire station. But there's a Family Dollar, a Circle K, and Fay Park without actually a corner because the road doesn't cross Fay Boulevard.
well, the fire station is a separate recommendation, and it had nothing to do with the land use and zoning changes that we're requesting. So what the PowerPoint presentation will do, will highlight the three areas that we're talking about as far as land use and zoning changes.
Okay,
And I apologize for not putting it in there, it was just an oversight on my part.
a little bit of a non-issue today then. All right, thank you, Jeff.
Good questions. Are there any more questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve or reject?
Motion to approve?
No, I'd like to make a motion to table until we have the map.
Is there a timetable for the approval of this? Can this be deferred to, I think we have a January meeting.
If that's the wishes of the committee or the advisory board.
So I know when the study was done, there was a timeline that was set up to try to get it to the commission. Are we up against that right now?
No, we are not.
So do we have time to move this to the January mission, or
You do.
meeting? Okay, do I have a motion to move this to the January meeting?
I'd like to
Second
make,
that motion.
You have an open motion to
That's
either
right.
second or not second.
Okay, so I do have an open, motion from Randy to approve. Do I have a second? Okay, I do not have a second, so
Thank you.
the motion is canceled. Do I have another motion?
I motion that we table this until the January meeting after we've gotten the map.
Okay, motion made by Carmella. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Maureen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
That meeting is January 6th.
January 6th,
Jan-
2020, 21. Okay, next item on the agenda is H2. Did all the board members get a copy of that package? Okay, has the board members had a chance to review the package?
Yes.
Are there some questions? Okay, so while the board is reviewing, I will open the floor up to Mr. Ferrero to address the board. If you would
Can
tell us a little
everybody
bit
hear me
about.
okay?
Yes.
Because I could pull this down. Are you okay if I pull this
Okay.
down from this far away? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can breathe a little bit better. Okay, thank you. And I would ask if, when you ask me a question, if you could speak up, because I'm having a hard time hearing everybody with their masks on, and I have a little bit of a hearing loss in my ear, so I apologize for that. So if you could speak up. Good evening, Board. I am here tonight to present to you these two considerations for zoning. Before I do that, I want to just do a really quick, brief history, because I've been before this board a few times in the past. I think the first time we talked was back in 2008 when we acquired the property, and we had hopes at that point that we'd have a Walgreens deal, and that's why we approached you guys. And it was just a wonderful time where we were able to work together. I recall taking a lot of the community's involvement, restricting uses that we put into a binding development plan, and that all worked great, but we never got the Walgreens. So we waited, and I think again in 2014 we came before you when we had the Family Dollar approach us, and again, working together with the board and getting the citizens' input, we were able to formulate a deal. We modified our binding development plan. We established the Family Dollar, and they're doing quite well in Port St. John. They seem to be very happy, and they provide a good service as a neighborhood retail to the community. Since then, we tried a few times with a couple of other uses that didn't make sense. They never made it beyond the initial stages. I think we had one where we were going to come in and appear before you, and the applicant withdrew the application before the meeting actually started because it was a controversial use, and I was glad to see that happen. But now we're sitting before you again tonight, and we've got a really good use. We're very excited about this. We were approached by a national hardware store chain that you all know, Ace Hardware, and they are the neighborhood hardware store. And so we believe this is a great fit for this property. So why am I here tonight? Why am I in front of the board? We have a BU1A zoning category in place. We have a binding development plan. Why can't we just go out and do this Ace Hardware? Well, that's a little bit of a long story. We can't do it for a couple of reasons. We have to come back and modify our binding development plan again. So we submitted that in our package to you tonight. The reason being is that when we sat down with Ace Hardware, the franchisee, they were very excited, but they had to take the site to corporate and get it approved. And corporate, in their infinite wisdom, looking at the traffic circulation and patterns around the Adams Place and Fay Boulevard, saw that the adding of delivery truck traffic to the existing Family Dollar entrance along Ace Hardware was not a good idea. They much preferred that they had a separate driveway a little farther down the road where the original South Adams Place driveway was, and that the limited deliveries could go in that capacity. And this was one of the requirements that Ace Hardware had in order to consider the site. So what I want to show you first is our proposed site plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next.
Mr. Chair, if I can just interject for a second, just for clarification, staff has not reviewed the site plan to see if it meets our county code. So just by Mr. Ferrero supplying that to you, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that it, when the site plan is submitted, then we'll review that per code. I do want to mention that Mr. Ferraro is asking to remove the condition for that Adams Place condition that that driveway be back allowed into that. I've been told by the engineers in Public Works that the spacing between the existing drive and that proposed drive does not meet FDOT setbacks. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that's the feedback so far that I have
Right.
from that.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
So this is a concept plan, as Jeff said, and it's just the beginning of a long process. If you recall, the Family Dollar deal, I think, took a little under 2 years from start to finish. So it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to happen according to all of the code qualifications and reviews and site plan submittals and all that stuff that occurs when we work through staff. What we wanted to show you is the reasoning why Ace Hardware is asking for this driveway to be reopened. So as Jeff mentioned, in a lot of cases where the Florida Department of Transportation is involved, they do have setback requirements from the corner of an intersection. One of the things I've noticed in my consulting life as of late, and I represent many different clients that are looking to do different type of commercial uses, that FDOT is definitely considering pushing traffic as far away from an intersection as they can, because the closer to an intersection, the more dangerous the situations could become from congestion. We've actually have one case right now where the owner is being requested to push 400 feet back from the intersection because he can, because he owns the land. So it's not necessarily that it has to be a certain amount, but it's definitely a pushback from FDOT to bring traffic away from a busier intersection. So with that in mind, what we've done is we've created kind of a circular path. If you look on your site plan, you will see that the limited deliveries, and let me state that we have been told by Ace Hardware that deliveries would probably be one time per week unless there's some kind of special event. So it's not like traffic would be going continually through there. And if you look at Family Dollar as well, they have a similar type of delivery system. They usually get one tractor trailer per week, which right now is making that left-hand turn into the existing Family Dollar driveway that we share with them. So we're proposing that it comes in through that back road and it comes around, and you could see between the proposed Ace and the Family Dollar, we're going to have a circular path of traffic that will be a loading zone area so that the truck can come in, unload, offload, and then go back out through that back service area, giving itself plenty of time to line back up with the traffic light. So that was one of the requirements of ACE. The second requirement was they wanted an outdoor garden center. It's pretty consistent with most of their stores. They can do them inside sometimes, but they prefer to do them outside because the outside garden center allows them to bring in the type of plantings and garden supplies and different things that you typically see in a neighborhood Ace Hardware. So these were the two requirements that were given to us. So we knew that we could address the first requirement by trying to modify the binding development plan. We have ordered a traffic study, and we'll have that for the next meeting when we go before the county commission. I had hoped to have it for this meeting, but it is not complete at this point. This traffic study is being done by an independent traffic engineer, and then it's going to be submitted to the county and also to staff as well, so their side could look at it, and it'll have their take on the intersection. Moving on to the outdoor garden center, we thought this was going to be pretty easy to accomplish, but we found out pretty quickly that under the current zoning of BU1A, all of the activities have to be within the enclosed walls. So that meant no to a garden center. So what we did is we went back to Ace Hardware and we said, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to submit the binding development plan, but here's where we're at with the outdoor garden center. We actually got them to agree, which really surprised me. They want to be in Port St. John so bad that they agreed to forego the outdoor garden center and do an indoor version of the garden center, and they were comfortable with that. And they do that in some of their different locations. So the franchisee was okay with that, and Ace pretty much signed off on that. So we decided it was time to submit. We started this process about 7 months ago. It was time to submit the application. But something happened. When we submitted the application, we were told that you can't do a hardware store in BU1A. Now, we were actually led to believe the whole time that we could. We had looked at the zoning code, and I'm going to read it to you tonight, and I'm going to let you guys kind of make your own decision. I'm not asking you to change the code. The code is the code, and there's nothing we could do about that, right? But under the BU1A zoning code, it says the following: permitted uses, the following uses or other uses of similar nature that are compatible with the character of uses specifically set forth in this subsection are permitted. All business uses and material and products shall be confined within substantial buildings completely enclosed with walls and roof. So looking at that, we went, okay, no problem. We're going to bring a retail store in. It's similar to the Family Dollar. It's retail. So we looked at some of the uses that were in here just to kind of see where we were at. We could do an antique shop. We can do bakery. We could do bookstores, computer sales. We could do confectionery, ice cream. These are just some of the retail uses: a drugstore, florist shop, jewelry store, luggage shop. And we got down to the one that really got us excited. We saw paint and wallpaper. And we thought, okay, I mean, that's similar to a hardware store. We didn't see the word hardware store, but we saw that. And we figured with the idea that we had a similar type retail use, we'd be okay. Well, staff told us no, that wasn't the case, that you can't do a hardware store in a BU1A. So at that point, we said, okay, what can we do a hardware store? And they said in a BU1 zoning. So knowing that in a BU1 zoning, we now didn't have a restriction for the outdoor sales, we might be able to bring the garden center back in. So we got a little excited about that. We said, okay, let's go ahead and submit the application for BU1. Wasn't that easy. They came back to us and they said, well, at BU1, you can't do it under your current future land use, which is neighborhood commercial. You're going to have to change the future land use to community commercial in order to allow a BU1 zoning, which will allow the hardware store to operate. At that point, I was very frustrated, and I didn't know whether or not we would be going forward, so some time went by. We went back and we talked to Ace Hardware. We had conversations with the buyer, the franchisee, and we looked at everything again, and we just said, okay, and I believe a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is the Family Dollar right now. That's there. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure, right? It's about a 9,500 square foot building. It's a metal building with a nice stucco exterior on it. Believe it or not, this is the identical building that Ace Hardware does. They all copy these type of buildings now. They're good sturdy buildings, they have a nice front to them, and they're easy to build. So we could do this under a BU1A. That, by the way, is the Family Dollar building with the Sherwin-Williams sign on it. Under the current zone, the zoning code of BU1A, we could do that. But we can't do this. In Ace Hardware, which I just put the sign on top of the Family Dollar building, which would be located right next to it, we couldn't do it. Very frustrated over the whole thing. The code's the code, and you have to stay within the code, right? So we went back to Ace Hardware and we said, okay, guys, if you're willing to take this leap with us, we'll go ahead and start this much longer process. But going in, we want to tell you something. We're going in and we're asking the county to change the future land use map, and that's not an easy thing to do. And it's a very serious consideration when you're going to change the future land use map, because you're creating precedents and different things. And you guys know that. You've been in this situation before. So we said, how could we be responsible? A said, well, you got to tell us whether or not you can do this or not. You know, you're the guys on the ground. You tell us whether you think this can happen. We said, well, here's what we're willing to do. We'll go back in and we'll say, because we have no choice, we'll go for the BU1 zoning. We'll restrict it just to hardware only. So you'll be able to get your outdoor garden center, your nice outdoor garden center, and we'll restrict all the other uses in BU1, and we'll put that in our binding development plan. We'll go back and make sure that the uses we've already restricted in BU1 will remain restricted, the ones that you guys wanted restricted before, and then we'll make our application for community commercial future land use, which I'm talking to you about now, and then the next part of this is the zoning change from BU1A to BU1. And they agreed to it. And we told them, well, you know, we're going to go make our case before the advisory board and then the local planning agency and then to the county commission. So that's where we are tonight. That's where we're sitting here. I don't want to be here tonight asking you to change the future land use map. If I were sitting in your chairs right now, I'd say you have to seriously consider that. But here we are in a perfect situation where we've got a great use for Port St. John, a 10,000 square foot hardware store that's going to do very well in Port St. John. It's a clean use, it's a responsible use, and we can't do it because our interpretation, just my professional opinion, is that the code is in default here. We should be able to do a retail hardware store in BU1A. It doesn't make sense. But now we're being forced and taken along to a place where we have to change the future land use map, change the zoning, create all these restrictions. As a responsible developer, we want to do that, just so we can bring this hardware store to Port St. John. So when you consider this, first part of this tonight, what I want to ask you is to seriously think about that. Maybe there's another conversation that we need to have with the county commission, that it may be time to revisit the code. Maybe the code's a little antiquated. I don't know the last time it was done, but I don't know if there's any such thing as hat cleaning and blocking anymore. Who cleans and I don't even know what blocking a hat is. There are things on here that maybe it's time, in the spirit of understanding of the code, that it would make sense if it's a similar retail store. I mean, what's the difference of selling a hammer in a Family Dollar and selling a hammer in a hardware store? They both sell hammers. I don't understand the reasoning behind it, but I'm willing to live within it because that's what I have to do. So I'm going to ask you, because you've read your staff reports, there's some negative staff comments about doing this. But I wanted you to have the whole story in front of you. I wanted you to understand why I'm standing here tonight in frustration asking you for this, because we finally found the right use, but we have this hurdle to overcome now, and we're going to ask you to support us in that. And we're going to ask you to give that kind of consideration as to why I'm asking you to support that kind of a situation that I wish I wasn't here asking for. On the good side of this, we did find one supporting property. It's in your package in Port St. John that I believe at one time was going to be a Dollar General. I don't know if Dollar General is still planning on going there or not, but the property was rezoned from another zoning to BU1, And in order to do that, they changed the future land use map to community commercial. So again, in the future of this conversation, in order to avoid this, it might be better to try to look at how we can fix this a little bit. But we can't deal with that tonight. But we did find a precedent where there is another property, 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels away from this parcel that did happen.
May I ask
Okay.
you a question? Or is that not time for that? May I ask a question?
Yes.
Or not yet? Okay. The parcel that you're referring to, is that the strip between the church and the back of the strip stores?
Yes.
Well, I want to point out that this board recommended that that change not happen, and the county commission, against the advice of this advisory board, voted for it to
Voted for
happen.
it in favor.
So we were not happy about that
Okay.
precedent.
But I do want to say it's an actual approved use now. So, and again, there's no other way to bring that retail to the site without doing that. If there was, I would love to know what it is. I think I have exhausted my time with staff. They've been very cooperative, and there's not much they can do within the scope of the code. The code is the code, and that's just the way it is.
Okay.
So that's number one. I'm going to jump into number two because then I'm going to allow you guys to ask me some questions. There's no one here from the public. Is there a speaker, or is anybody going to speak from the public? Okay.
So
Number
you wanna-
two.
Mr. Ferrero, you want
truck.
to talk about
I'm sorry?
H3? You want to talk about H3 right now? Is that what your second request?
I can't hear you.
So you want to talk about switching from BU1, BU1A to BU1? Is that what your subject is right now?
The first part
Let
of
me-
that-
let me-
the
let me
first part of
interject
this
for a second,
hearing
I'm
is
sorry.
the future land use.
Okay. hang on,
So
hang-
there's two items that Mr. Ferraro has. Item H2 is the land use change, which he is requesting to go from neighborhood commercial NC land use to community commercial CC. His third item, H3, is the zoning component of that, which he's requesting to go from BU1A to BU1. Two separate applications, but they're companion. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing and you guys don't get confused.
I would like to at this point.
Because,
Well,
I mean,
no,
they
no.
kind of interrelate with each other.
They are. It's up to the chair if
I would
how he
like
wants to do it.
First, to keep this simple, I would like to first address your
Okay.
first request, okay?
All right.
So I will begin, and I will say that the small area study that you were actually on the committee.
Yeah.
Okay, so the small area study does also talk about community commercial properties. And one of the items that I picked up on in your package and looking at comments and all that is that your proposed location for the Ace Hardware is actually in violation of the small area study. Had it been moved forward from this committee and gone to the commission, we would have been able to discuss that this is in violation of the small area study. The small area study has a requirement that the CC, what's it called, the community commercial developments have to be 2 miles apart. And the report is indicating that your proposed location is 1.32 miles away. So this is an example where the small area study is actually trying to help us out here. It actually recommends that there's 3 locations where these developments can go. Okay? One is over there at Port St. John Parkway in Grissom. Okay? The other one is over there at Curtis and Fay. And the third one is Fay and US 1. Those are the areas that the small area study put down as community commercial.
I do
Okay.
recall that conversation.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's the first thing I noticed, so if we move forward on this zoning, that would now put us in contradiction to the small area study. That was already approved, and it's moving its way through. Second thing is, the small area study talks about, where these communities, commercial developments are. For example, they need to be located on a collector and arterial highway intersection, okay? This one is a collector and intersection road. So it doesn't meet that criteria either. And I have to believe the reason that that criteria is there is because of the type of traffic and that will be going into that
I
property.
agree with everything you're saying, Vaughn.
Okay.
And
I
that's
know
what's
that-
frustrating about
I know, and I want to make sure that the rest of, this committee is aware, if they have not fully digested what's in the small area study, this is in the small area study, okay? So, and again, the small area study designated that the future community commercial areas are, again, like I told you, the Parkway and Grissom, Curtis and Fay and US 1. This area does not fall into that, and it's too close to another community, I have a hard time with that one, community commercial property, zone property. So.
Land
what I-
use, it's not zoning, land use.
Land use, okay. So what I will remind the committee is, if the committee moves forward and approves H2, now that puts the small area study, all the work that was done on the small area study, kind of like in jeopardy, has to be redone or something, and I don't know what the county's position is on that, okay?
Well,
So I want to make sure the committee understands all that before we move forward, okay? Carmela.
I think that this was great work, and I wouldn't personally want to contradict anything in here. My wanting to table this was simply for clarification, but I am adamantly opposed to this zoning change, this future land use change. I'm adamantly opposed to that. We don't have the traffic study. That was one of the things that was the holdup with the Family Dollar store. And when you do get the traffic study, if it's within the next few months, remember that traffic is going to increase by 1/3 when the kids who are homeschooling right now go back to Challenger. It's not a precedent. I think that the people of Port St. John want a land use of community commercial there.
And I will also add, because I was on that committee when we talked about the Family Dollar, and it was the liquor store with the drive-through window that was going to go right where the Ace Hardware was, and that's the one that your client pulled back the.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Vaughn. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you speak closer to the mic?
Okay, give that a shot. All right, so I was on the committee when we addressed your previous development in this area, which it was supposed to be for a liquor store with a drive-through window, if you remember that.
A
That
what
was-
store?
It was supposed to be a liquor store at one time with a drive-through window.
What happened was there was an applicant that wanted to do like a farm store. The liquor store thing got so blown out of
Right.
proportion. He wanted to do like a farm store, the kind where you drive up and you can buy milk and eggs, and he wanted to sell alcohol as well. What happened was the newspapers got a hold of it. I showed up at the zoning hearing that night. I called him and I said, there's a mob of people out here. And he said, cancel it.
Yeah.
I don't want the hassles. I don't want to deal with it.
So-
Forget it. And he pulled the zoning item before it went in.
So what I wanted to remind the committee was this access road that you want to reopen through a change to the BDP was closed, and it was closed because of the school. And it was, the reason it was closed, there was a lengthy discussion on the students that are walking down that sidewalk. And Family Dollar had to modify their site plan to accommodate the concerns that this committee had. And they did, and they closed that road back there. So what he's asking now is to change the binding development plan to reopen that road. And the school's still there, even though we're in COVID, the school is still there. I don't see where the situation has changed, but I just want to make the committee
I'd
aware
like to
of
address that
previous.
during the second part of the hearing. That's where I have my next presentation. So do you want to do them together, or do you want to
I would
separate them?
rather, because if we don't get past the second one, then there's really no
Right.
point going to the third one.
Understood.
Okay, so I want to make sure that the committee is aware of all the history and what the small area study did and how it affects our second item on the, H2 on the agenda. Okay.
How many of us were on the small area study out of this committee?
You, me,
Yeah.
and Mr. Ferrero.
Okay, so.
Yeah, can I answer your question about what you just mentioned about the small area study? Okay. As most of you know or don't know, I was on that committee. I think I was vice chair
Yes.
of it. It was a great study. It was a wonderful thing to put that together. I was somewhat surprised at the last meeting, and I'll mention it because you brought it up. I wasn't going to bring it up. We had a bunch of recommendations on there. These are recommendations that had to do with citizen input survey, people that took their time and effort to come to the meetings, people that were concerned about a lot of things. At that meeting, and some of you weren't at that meeting, and there wasn't a full complement there, but there was enough to hold the meeting. It was told to us, and I remember these words, it's hopefully in the minutes, that somewhere we had gotten off the rails, is what I recall was said. How did we get to this point? And it was told to us that these recommendations that we had spent so much time working on were now needed to be reconsidered because they really weren't meeting the scope of the study. And then we needed to reconsider them. I felt personally somewhat pressured to go with the flow and remove, you saw the ones that were removed, Maureen.
Yeah.
They were all removed. They were voted on and we removed them because this is what we were doing. And I felt it was a little manipulative. I also felt like at the last minute we had a presentation by Mr. Ball about these 3 zoning items. Out of the blue, I had no idea what these zoning items had anything to do with the small area study. In fact, the final item said no recommendation. I went on record and said, why in the world would we put a recommendation in a recommendation study to go to the county that says no recommendation? That's ridiculous. I didn't understand it. Still to this day, I don't. Now, if this is in there, maybe to try to keep some other zoning matters from going forward, then maybe that's why it's in there. I don't know. But I was planning on speaking at the county commission meeting about this because I wasn't happy with the outcome of this study. I didn't feel that the study that we have reflects or represents what the citizens gave us input to do. Almost every one of the recommendations that had to do with green space and parks and different things was voted out. And so there you have it. I don't believe you should give any consideration to that study whatsoever.
Well,
I think it was manipulated and put together for a purpose, and I'm going to find out what that purpose is because I was a chair on that committee, and I don't like to be manipulated. And I felt very manipulated when I had walked out of that meeting. And I had a conversation with another board member, since we're allowed to talk now, the small area study's over. And I just felt like, my God, why did we spend 6 months getting together, talking about all this stuff, when there's just these few items in there? It was kind of told to us, if you put too much in there, you don't want to do that. Let's pick the top 3. But it was like, well, what about all the others? And these type of things happen. So
Well,
if you want to
Mr.
consider
Ferrero-
that tonight, you can consider it, but I would ask you to give it no consideration
yeah,
at all.
and I want to keep the focus on this meeting, not this.
I understand,
small
Vaughn, you
area
brought
study.
it up, so
did.
I feel like
So-
if it's being used to defend against
So-
you looking at this Ace Hardware, then I want you to understand what I believe occurred at that
And
last
that,
meeting.
and that's fair. My point is that it's on the agenda for us to approve, and it was not reviewed tonight. It'll be reviewed in January, and I know what's in there because I read it, and you and I were both on it, and we know that it talks about community here's our word again, community commercial, okay?
Right.
And so I just want the committee to fully understand what the small area study said as opposed to what the request here tonight is for this Ace Hardware, okay?
So let me also, if I can for a minute, let me just talk about the turning radius and the tractor trailers, because it sounds like you're concerned about that and the traffic, and it's a consideration for your community
Mr.
commercial zoning.
Mr. Ferrero, I really don't see the benefit to making the future land use community commercial in that spot. In fact, all I see is the downside of it. I don't think it fits with the surrounding area. I think the traffic study will prove that it is inappropriate, so close to a school, to open that back driveway up for tractor trailers. And at this point, I honestly feel like we're almost ready for a motion.
So I have a question for you, Mr. Ferrero. Okay, so the back driveway, what would prevent customers from using that?
Good question. We were hoping to get some feedback from this board and when we go through to the county commission. So we are willing to put up signage and do whatever and even put it into the binding development plan that it'll be limited to the delivery traffic only. We are also going to ask Family Dollar to use it because it will then remove those large trucks from the front of the property, making that left-hand turn off of Fay onto Adams and then making a sharp left about 75 feet in from the corner. So we will allow them to use it as well. So
Well-
we will be willing to put whatever language in the binding development plan, put up signage and do whatever we need to do to.
I do believe that when Family Dollar came and presented their site plan, the orientation of the loading dock is set to accommodate the entrance that they have. So if the trucks came in the other way, they wouldn't be able to get to that loading dock the way it was designed.
They would have to modify their site.
They
yes,
would
Ron.
have to modify their
Yeah, they
site
would have
and
to
the
modify
building
their site.
to accommodate.
Our understanding from our conversations with them is they weren't happy. They do have some problems with congestion and delivery and such.
Yep, it's kind of the wrong store to be in that location, in my opinion. There's a lot of traffic and you've
I
got.
guess it lines up with the gas station as well.
Yes,
and
it does. It's directly across.
Yeah, it creates
The
further
driveway is,
congestion.
yes. So, again, a sign is not going to stop anybody from driving through that road to the hardware store. A sign won't do it. A barricade of some kind would.
We would be willing to consider whatever the board wanted to offer as, a recommendation for that. When we went through this with the Family Dollar, if you recall, we offered to put up a gate.
Yep.
And close it. I went and met with the school board. I went and met with the principal of Challenger, and they both told me, we don't want to do that. I mean, how is that going to work, And then there was a fight between the school board and the county crossing guards, and there was all this stuff. And when we went before the county commission, they basically said, look, you're going to design this as best as you can. People are going to be understanding that when the children are coming out of school, the crossing guards are going to be there, and they're going to, we haven't had any kind of incident that I know of since the Family Dollar's been open.
No, but is that a risk you want to take? And that's what is that a risk you want to take? And that's what this committee looked at.
Sure.
Back when Family Dollar was coming, because it is a legitimate concern, having those kids walk down through there, and there is no crossing guard right there in that area, but you would have trucks and vehicular traffic going into those stores. And that's why the BDP was done the way it was done, and the entrance was moved up, and the configuration of the store was such that the truck could come in from up front and back right into that loading dock. What you propose tonight to allow Family Dollar to use that back area won't help the truck unless they redesign that loading dock area of Family Dollar.
If they choose to, yeah,
It'll
we don't
help
know if they would
customers.
do that.
It would
correct.
help customers coming and going. So back to my point, is what would keep the cars and minivans from using that back space, which was the concern that this committee had.
So it
several
would
years
have
ago.
to be something that we would put into the binding development plan, then we'd have to enforce it with the Ace Hardware. I mean, I'm going to say that, if it becomes a policing issue and we tell Ace Hardware that this is a requirement of you opening your doors and this is a requirement of them opening their doors, they'll have to self-police it. One of the things I know about Port St. John is that, there's a lot of community involvement. So if they were to go ahead and go against the binding development plan, from what I understand, they would be putting themselves in legal jeopardy from
Yes.
doing that. They can't do that. They're not going to invest $2.5–3 million to open a store and then put themselves in a legal jeopardy position. What they'll do if they can't abide by it, they'll say no and they'll walk away from the deal. because they don't want to have that kind of risk or liability. No national chain wants to have that.
I don't think this committee wants that liability
Sure.
either of a child getting run
Sure.
over, possibly by
Will you
a
let me
car.
do this? Will you let me present my turning radiuses so
Okay.
I can talk about how I believe, and you guys can make your own decision?
Okay, and then
That
we'll,
this might be safer.
okay, and
Mr.
then
Chair,
we'll
is-
talk
is-
about this.
If I could just, so before you is the PowerPoint presentation that was presented to the committee with the three areas identified. So that's just for your edification.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Greg.
as another idea, I mean, looking at that back driveway, I could see people coming from out of the school and making a right turn into that parking lot, trying to get out to Fay to get around that red light.
Yep, yeah,
That would be another, because we know how people drive. I mean, somebody gets held up for a minute or two, they get in a hurry, they got to get around traffic.
yeah, and then you have children
Right.
walking down that sidewalk right there.
So here's basically the argument I'd like to present for this, or the consideration I'd like to present for this. Right now, currently under the BU1A zoning, we can operate any of these other uses. So if this doesn't work and Sherwin-Williams knocks on our door and they wanted to go there, we're good to go. We have the zoning approval, we have everything, we already have the cross easement agreement with Family Dollar. What we have here is a restriction from cars, from any vehicle entering in on that back road. When you look at these turning radiuses, and what I did for the last couple of hours today is I watched YouTube videos on how to drive tractor trailers so I can better understand how these vehicles move. They have very, very large turning radiuses, and this is a typical truck that's about 45 to 50 feet. When that truck is trying to make a left-hand turn right now into that property, it crosses over. It's a full access driveway. It crosses over. And that creates that vehicle to have to stop if there's traffic there. And at certain times of the day, we all live in Port St. John, we know that there's traffic on that road. So what I'm trying to ask you to consider is that can happen and that can be multiplied already, because if we do find another user that's there, we can go ahead and do that on the BU1A side where the church is. And we will have to add more tractor-trailer traffic into that driveway. It's the only way they can get in and out.
That's certainly
They're
a
not going to be
risk.
able to get in off of Fay Boulevard.
Yep, that's certainly a risk, I understand.
What I'm proposing, though, is to alleviate that, to make it a better situation, to allow limited traffic to go toward that back road in a way that, if we can work out some kind of additional language or something that makes you comfortable, it's going to make it, the intersection and the driveway safer. It's just going to do it because it's pushing traffic back about 300 feet, the tractor trailer, before it executes its left-hand turn without cars coming out of the Mobile or Kangaroo, whatever it is right now, without cars coming in and out of the Fay Boulevard. So in my mind, it's a better situation than the current situation that you have. So you may agree, you may disagree with me, that's your prerogative. I just offer that to you to consider that as well, because we have a situation there. I agree with Kiri that it's going to be a busy intersection, and I believe what the traffic study is going to show is not that the intersection is not going to get less busy, but that by alleviating tractor-trailer traffic and pushing it down the road to the next driveway, it's going to make it less congested. That is pretty much a certainty. When you look at the way these trailers turn and the radius that they need to turn, and what I'm going to do before the next meeting as well is I'm going to take some videoing of the traffic at different times of the day at that Family Dollar so we can see what kind of stacking is occurring. I've witnessed it personally a few times where cars will allow the driveway to remain open, and sometimes they don't. They push a little bit closer because they want to get through that light as quickly as possible. And if you have a tractor trailer coming in this way, and he doesn't have the ability to make the turn He's not going to do it. He's going to wait. He's going to sit there and wait. Now, he is coming in off of Fay Boulevard. He's got his wheels facing toward Challenger. He needs to execute a left. He's got to go all the way, as this says, out beyond the driveway, come back around so his trailer will follow him. He's stopped. He's a 50-foot truck, stopped. Now, the next guy that's turning left to come into Fay can't get there. Maybe he can make it to the corner. Maybe he gets stuck in the intersection. It's a mess over there. It should probably never have been approved. We had no, any kind of say-so on whether that driveway was approved. That was presented as part of the site plan with the developer that bought the property and put the Family Dollar in there. When you look at that, we know this today, that FDOT would never approve that driveway.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you telling me that by increasing exponentially the tractor-trailer traffic on that street and making the turn from a two-lane street where there is no leeway on the right-hand side into the driveway beyond is a better scenario than fewer tractor-trailers making a sharp left where there is leeway to go out to the right on the right-hand side? You're telling me that's a better scenario?
I am not saying that, no. What I am saying is that there will be additional tractor-trailer traffic there at some point in the future. It's inevitable. There will be a final development of that property. It may be a week from now, a year from now, I don't know. It's going to happen. Under the current scenario and the current binding development plan that we have no choice for that tractor-trailer traffic to make the sharp left 75 feet from the corner of Fay Boulevard, going down Adams to make the left to get into the Family Dollar, to access the property next door. In other words, the Family Dollar traffic is already there, but where the church sits right now, there's going to be some type of commercial structure there, and it is going to access through that same road. So I'm saying that is a worser scenario than allowing that truck to go down the road a ways where there's less traffic and execute the left-hand turn safer. Yes.
I would say that refusing to lift the binding development plan and refusing to make the future land use community commercial, which isn't the recommendation here neighborhood commercial, not community commercial?
It's currently neighborhood commercial, yes.
It's currently,
Neighborhood commercial.
isn't it
Yes.
residential
We're
for?
BU1A zoning with a neighborhood commercial future land use.
This property was not contemplated in the study.
Okay. Setting that aside, I don't believe that changing the future land use designation to CC is going to help the traffic, the tractor-trailer traffic going in and out of that spot. If we have the binding development plan in place and we do not change the future land use designation there, then the chances of us having a commercial property going in there that requires lots of tractor-trailer traffic is reduced. And that's what this committee should be concerned about. What fits in that community, what fits in that area, right next to the school, is not this. That's my opinion.
I respect your opinion.
Carmine, is there any possibility of putting two entrances off of Fay where the truck traffic could come in and go all the way a U-shape around the building?
I don't believe so. I
'Cause
don't believe
with
so.
that turn, with the median crossing there, if they put that other driveway to the far right of that property, the east side of it, they may be able to even come in from westbound Fay Boulevard into there.
I believe
and then back out
that
somehow,
they
and
have to
that-
line up with a traffic light.
And then that would eliminate the Adams Place issue, because that's, the board, we're all against that. I mean, we had that issue come to pass before, and we didn't want any more traffic on Adams Place when the Family Dollar was approved. I was just wondering if you could do something, keep all that traffic on Fay.
I guess if the traffic was coming from I-95 and they might be able to execute a right, I was told this, that tractor trailers prefer to execute a right than a left. They make right-hand turns easier. The left is a little harder to make because the swing is farther out.
Well,
In
it's
fact, I read
easier-
somewhere that UPS,
I drove a truck for a while. It's easier
Okay.
to make a left turn because you can see everything on the left-hand side. When you're going right turns, you can't see down the right side of the truck.
right. I'm just telling you what I read. I
Right.
mean, I am nowhere an expert on it, but I read somewhere that UPS encourages their drivers only to make right-hand turns. But regardless of that, so coming from 95, it wouldn't be a problem, but coming from US 1, it would. If they were traveling that way, they would have no way to make a U-turn at that intersection with a tractor trailer. So they would be, they would have no way of getting into the property other than turning down.
Well, I was just wondering if you'd considered that, if FDOT would even approve something like that, reconfiguring that median a little bit in front of that store. Or they could come in if they were going west and turn into the eastbound part of that parking lot and go a U all the way around it. That alleviates the traffic off Adams.
Well, if you're talking about I-95,
Well,
put this out on the
95
Parkway. The Parkway's got lots of room, and it's already designated for this type of property.
What is?
The Parkway and I-95. There's plenty of land right there, and it's already,
That's not where they want to be.
I understand that,
They
but
want to be next to Family Dollar.
I know they do,
because
but you
it's-
see,
it's a
the issues
similar
are,
use
the
and
issues
it's,
are gonna be access,
Sure.
and the issues are gonna be that road. And to avoid all these issues, move the store somewhere else. If this is a great store, which Ace is, whether they move it 1.3 miles down the street to a area that can accommodate this, or leave it here, it's gonna be busy. But it's gonna have a lot of trouble getting past.
But this is a site that they've chosen.
I know.
So, I mean, that's an argument, or that's a discussion that's rhetorical. We could have all day long. This is where they want to
Yep.
be. So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to get.
Okay, and that's
through.
what we're going to address tonight.
Sure.
And so, at this point, have you finished your
I have,
presentation?
yes.
Okay. Are there any more questions for Mr. Ferrero? Any comments? Okay, so do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we deny the change to the future land use plan.
Okay, so there's a motion to deny the change to the future land use. Is there a second? Okay, so the motion does not carry? All right, any comments? Okay, so if you would like,
I have a comment.
Yes.
I have a comment. I'm new to the board. You mentioned a traffic study to follow. Maybe out of respect for Mr. Farrar's time, we could table this item until after our study, so we're not contradicting our own study, and then also to allow a traffic study to be submitted, so we're not guessing what can and can't happen with DOT regulations, and what can and can't happen with median changes, and what can and can't happen with driveways or no driveways. It's all based off of assumptions, and rather than close the door completely, just table it until after we decide where we're going with our study. So we
Okay.
don't contradict ourselves in the eyes of the county as well.
okay, are you making a motion?
I am making that motion.
You're making a
Somebody-
motion to table H2 to the January meeting.
Yes.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second that, yeah.
So there's a second, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 We have discussion on that first?
Okay, would you like to
So
discuss? Sorry.
We're about to close up the whole subject. We have addressed what happens within the property, and it's an old argument about the driveway behind the Family Dollar. What we've not talked about in all this is the property doesn't meet the criteria for a community commercial. And when you look at that, you need to look at everything about the property. At the far end of the block, which we haven't talked about at all, there are residential homes on that block. When you lift the zoning up to community commercial and then BU1 here, you bring that much closer to those homes. You remove the opportunity to downscale the zoning again before you get to residential. So for that reason, you know, when it comes back around, I'll save you all the talk of the driveway and the trucks. I just don't think it should be on that block. So,
Mr. Chair, I
Thank
just
you,
want
Mr.
everyone, this is scheduled to go to the LPA on Monday, the 23rd, and it goes to the board December 3rd.
And I have to keep those dates, so if you have to deny me tonight, that's okay. I would prefer not to table if that's okay. I appreciate that
Okay, so-
opportunity, but we have to keep those dates.
Do we have an option of taking no action on this?
No, you have to provide a recommendation.
We have to
I would
provide a
like to
recommendation.
bring back the motion that we deny this future land use change.
Okay, so
second.
there is a motion to deny item H2, and there is a second. Are there any further discussions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. So the motion carries. H2 has been denied.
So we don't need to do the second one,
We do not
correct?
need to move forward at
Okay.
this point.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Are there any comments from the public at this point? No? Any other discussions from the committee?
May I ask one last question? I'm still confused about this, and I just want to ask a quick question.
Okay.
On the last page, and what I read in here, maybe I didn't read it carefully because I was reading very quickly. I thought that the change that was requested or proposed was a change from residential 4 to neighborhood commercial.
I'm sorry.
Am I
So where are you at?
Before we get into the conversation with that, I'd just like to, Mr. Chair, can I just, we don't have an attorney present, so I don't want to, I would like to have a recommendation for item H3, even though you can't hear it, but just so we cross our Ts and dot our Is, I would like this board to have a recommendation, whether, you approve it or deny it. But I think we need to have a recommendation.
On
for that.
H3?
Yes.
One way or the other?
That was the change from
Okay.
BU 1A to BU 1?
One with a binding development plan.
Okay. So, do we have a motion for H3?
I move that we deny the zoning change as well.
For
In that
H3,
spot.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Greg, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay,
One opposed?
it's going to be community commercial, it should be BU1.
But it's not going to be community commercial.
We denied it.
We just denied that.
Two separate items. So H3 doesn't even come into existence unless H2 is approved.
Correct.
But we denied H2,
Right.
and we were asked for a motion.
We don't
on
have
it.
the
Okay.
authority to deny, we recommend.
We recommended a no. Okay, so the motion carries with one nay for H3. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. Having said that, I believe we have accomplished all that was on the agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's made to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Next meeting will be January 6th, 2021.
And where will that be, Bob?
Yeah.
Believe, well,
Here?
do we know if it's going to be here or at the library?
Here in the library or the community center.
Yeah, the community center, I think.
Stay tuned, you'll get an email. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.